Hi, you guys. My name is Cherie. Welcome to Whose Life Is It Anyway? Hi, you guys. I am so excited for you guys to join me back on my new podcast. And thank you for giving it a try and coming and hanging out for the day. I am super excited to be able to put this new podcast out. This is something that I've really wanted to do for a long time. One of my most favorite things in this world is getting to know people, getting to know what's in their hearts, who they are, and what they see for their future. And the reason for that is I just think that with the way that our world is with social media, we tend to get very disconnected. Even though we're connected on so many different platforms out there, it's something that I think is actually kind of separating us because we don't get together and have conversations with people and really see who they are, what's in their heart, and what they have to give to the world. And I was originally going to start this podcast out in a different way, and this was kind of a last minute interview, so I am grateful to my friend here for being able to join me today. But I was going to release the first one after Mother's Day, and I love being a mother so much. Being a mom is one of the most beautiful gifts that you could ever have in this life. And I just thought, why don't I start this off on the day of the year that means the most to me and bring somebody to this conversation who can give that beautiful gift to others. And so I wanted to bring this story to you guys because I actually don't know Jess too well. We're just kind of getting to know each other a little bit here on my couch. And the cool thing about it is I'm going to get to know her just along the way as you guys are going to get to know her and her story. I've seen tidbits of her story on social media. I actually know her through another friend, and I've just been inspired by her story and the beautiful gift that she gives to families. So I wanted to introduce you guys to my friend, Jess Holmes.
Hi guys, I'm Jess.
So, kind of what I want to know from the beginning. So why don't you tell people what you do exactly, and then I'll kind of get into the backstory of how this all came about, and what your reason is for doing it.
Okay. So I'm a surrogate. I'm a gestational carrier. There are actually two different types of surrogacy. There's gestational surrogacy, and that's what I'm doing. The embryo is not genetically mine. So it's just both mom and dad, it's their cells, and they made the baby. It's their DNA. It's not any way, shape, or form mine at all. I just carry and love the child until they are ready to come into this world and meet their family.
That's amazing. I mean, the thing I think that I'm so drawn to with your story, honestly, is the fact that after I had my second baby, I actually had a really hard time getting pregnant. I actually wanted to have my kids 2 years apart, and when I was trying to have my third baby, it took 4 years for me to get pregnant, and
that's hard.
I just know how hard that is, and I'm going to try not to cry on this. I
probably know, right? Will. We should have tissues right here.
I know, I should have thought about that. But for me, I think that's what was so beautiful about your stories, because I know that struggle. And here we go. I'm sorry. Anytime I talk about being a mom, I start to cry. But I know going through that time for me was very, very hard. Mm-hmm. Because every month that you find out that you're not pregnant, mm-hmm. that ends up being like your worst day again.
Yeah.
And to have that happen over and over again for years is one of the hardest things a woman can go through.
It's hard. There's a lot of definitely, I know child loss. I actually miscarried triplets. A lot of people don't know that about me.
Wow.
It was so I have 3 boys, my 2 oldest and my youngest. So we would have became a family. We would have had 5 kids like overnight, like if I would have carried those babies to term. And, life's funny. And I look at it now, like I didn't always look at it this way, but I've healed from it. I've grown, and I've looked at it now that it's a blessing. It was a blessing in disguise, because at that time in my life, I was not ready to take that on. Mentally, emotionally, I was not ready to just have 5 kids. 3 of them all be the same age. Like, you're trying to care for 3 babies at once. Like, that's insane. Like, it's crazy. So
Yeah, and I actually want to show, show a picture of your cute family because you really do have such a beautiful family. So,
Thank you.
how old are their ages now?
So this photo's probably about 2 years old, but now they are about, my oldest will be 11 in June, and my middle child's 8, and my baby's 5. He just turned 5 at the beginning of this year. And they are a handful.
They are so gorgeous.
Yeah, boys are boys. They are just so, I mean, my boys, I guess. My boys are rowdy and rambunctious and fun, but I wouldn't have it any other way. They're constantly making me laugh. They're constantly challenging me, and it's great.
I love that. That's actually like one of the reasons why I started following you and started like seeing some of the things that you post, because your family is just such a beautiful family. And then when I heard when you actually wrote something on social media about what you were doing, I just was drawn to your story and everything that goes into it, all the emotions. Like, I think about being able to do this for somebody, and I don't know if I could do it. And I don't know that very many women out there could do it. I think it'd be very hard because I know that there is that bond as you're...
There is, and I get asked that a lot. I get asked, was it hard to give the baby away? Was it hard to... And to me, I'm not giving the baby away because it was never mine to begin with.
Yeah.
But there still is that bond. There's still that caring, that love, that nurturing that goes into it. And yeah, you're with this child for 9 months, right? Like, that's a lot just to be like, here you go.
Yeah.
But it's more like loving them from afar, like you would like your niece or your nephew. Like, it's kind of that relationship, that dynamic. And it's really, my middle child actually, through the last surrogacy, he came up with the term cousin. So he calls baby Dalton, which was the first baby that I had carried for this family, he calls him his cousin Dalton. Baby that. Dalton is cousin Dalton. So they're our cousins. So, and we've just, a beautiful relationship has formed with them. They're amazing people. They are more than deserving of children. And it's sad because people take it for granted every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I remember the first moment I experienced that, taking it for granted, because I did, before I had my second baby, I actually had an ectopic pregnancy.
Oh, wow.
And that was very traumatic for me. I mean, more traumatic than even like some that other people go through because of the way my doctor and the nurses kind of handled it.
Yeah.
I remember we didn't have insurance at the time, but I knew I wanted to have another baby. And so we were planning a way to make it work out. And when I was pregnant with this baby and I found out that it was an ectopic pregnancy, my doctor, actually it was the nurse, she called me on a Friday night after they got the results back with what was going on, because they had done an ultrasound and saw that it was getting smaller and that it wasn't getting the nutrition that it was needing. And then when they found out that it was actually not in the right place, right? So they wanted to do some other tests and everything, and they called me back on a Friday evening. So I'm going into the weekend where you can't call your doctor or have any type of I don't know, just needing to talk to somebody who understood what you were going through, because I had no idea what I was going through. And my nurse called me and she says, this is an ectopic pregnancy. This is what this means. If we let this keep growing, it could kill you and the baby. The baby's not going to be able to grow outside of where it's supposed to be, right? And I was just in shock, I remember. And I got off the phone and I just had this weird, overwhelming, like, feeling of fear, because all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not going to get to have this baby that I want so bad, but also could I die? And that's what it kind of left me with, right? And I started freaking out. Like, I was just bawling uncontrollably over the weekend, and my husband's like, okay, if it was a bigger emergency, they would be bringing you into the hospital, and so I was just like in this freak out moment. And because we didn't have insurance, they sent me over to this hospital to go have the baby removed so that it wouldn't affect my health as well. And I remember walking in and they're like, oh, well, you need to pay, this whole thing's going to cost like $28,000 and we need $7,000 up front for us to go through that.
That's ridiculous. That's so like,
because they didn't have insurance and it was so frustrating. And I just walked out of that hospital. I'm like, I don't have $7,000 to get started with this, So I just like remember driving home and I'm just bawling the whole time, thinking that I'm going to lose my life too, luckily my doctor was amazing, and she was able to make it work in her office for me to get myself to where I needed to be. But I was going through all of that, and I was working at this place where this woman had just had a baby not too long ago, and she wasn't married. She didn't have any, like, she had babies from different fathers, and she was having babies because of the help that she was getting from the government. And she like explained that to me.
Wow.
And she was pregnant again, and she was just walking around just telling everybody how much money she would get from the government for having another baby. This was like her fifth baby. And here I was just wanting my second baby,
Yeah.
and realizing how others can take that beautiful gift for granted was just kind of horrifying to me, and what I was going through. And so becoming a mother and that whole process has always been such a traumatic thing for me, because it doesn't happen so easily for me like it did other people. My first baby, super easy,
Yeah.
but you never know what life's going to
No.
bring you,
Yeah, you don't.
So I wanted to know a little bit about what your why is, and why you wanted to do something like this.
So my why is kind of more like, why not? And that's because pregnancy is easy for me, and it's not easy for a lot of women. And my heart breaks when I hear stories that, oh, I had morning sickness till I was like 30 weeks pregnant. And, I have some friends and family that I know that like it was so bad they even lost their jobs, like, because they couldn't go into work. And it's hard. And I think women don't get a fair break when they're pregnant. But just being able to carry a full-term pregnancy and just have it be kind of just like quote unquote boring, like
Yeah.
that. And I don't know, that's probably a bad term to use, but for me they are. That's just kind of like, okay, I have a baby here and we just get to go about our day to day. And there's usually this is number 5, like pregnancy. And well, with the exception of the miscarriage, there's been like no surprises. Everything's just status quo and good, and life's good. And so it's like, yeah, why not? Why not give somebody that gift? And my kids make me so happy, daily. And you're a mom. It's difficult at times, yes, but the reward trumps
Oh yeah.
that difficulty. And so it's just so worth it. Like why not? Why not give somebody that gift? If you're capable of it, why not experience that? And it's allowed me to grow as an individual. It's allowed my family to grow. Like my kids they're so open now to it because of the process, and like including them and just making sure that they have the facts.
Yeah.
I think is very important, and they understand from day one that like, this is what we're doing. It's not our baby. We can't keep it. It doesn't belong to us. And then they get to love and nurture and help me grow the baby. And then when he comes or she comes, they get to see him and hold him and love them. And then, like a cousin, or
Yeah.
like you're, just kind of that same dynamic, or like a best friend. And then we see him occasionally, and it's great. So it's really helped my family grow.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
I think it's the most beautiful gift you can really give to anybody in any family, because I have had friends that have also gone through adopting and fostering.
And that's hard. That's not always easy. That's
It's
a process.
super
I have
hard.
friends that have done that, and it's very difficult. And it's to the point where they're like, well, what if the family backs out last minute and we don't get our baby? And, they're invested in it emotionally and financially, everything else.
Yeah.
And so like I've had people ask me, they're like, well, what would you rather do, surrogacy or adoption? And it's like, honestly, like, I don't blame you either way. Like, I think they're both great. It's both a great gift, but they're both difficult, and they both have their own struggles, but it's even hard for those families that just say, okay, we're going to go with adoption because it's easier, but it's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
It's not. So.
Yeah, actually, one of my friends that went through that, they found out that they would never have kids, so they worked with an agency and had this girl who was 16 who was pregnant. And so they actually knew from, I think, the 4th month that they were going to have this baby, and they kind of started with this relationship and all of that process. And then the day came that she had the baby, and when she held the baby.
She held it.
And she decided she didn't want to give them the baby, and she took the baby home. So here's this couple who
Yeah.
had been waiting for like 4.5 months for this new baby that they knew that they couldn't have on their own.
I know.
And their
It's
heart
so
and everything
hard.
goes into it. And then she took the baby home and said, no, never mind, I changed my mind. And luckily, after a couple of weeks of having the baby, she realized that it was going to be a lot harder than what she had thought it was going to be. And they ended up still getting to have that baby. She actually brought the baby back to them.
Wow.
And so, and that doesn't always
No,
happen.
that doesn't happen hardly ever. Usually that mom holds that baby and she's like, yep, this is mine, I'm keeping it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, good for her for accepting, you know, that maybe that wasn't her path. And,
Yeah.
you know, and there's no shame in that. There's no shame in whatever decision you make. It's hard. Motherhood is hard.
Yeah.
It's definitely a job. It's,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, it's work sometimes.
Yeah. So how did you come in contact with this family? Was this a family? And this second baby that you are having is for the same family, right?
Yes, yeah. So it's the same family. The first one was a boy. This one's a girl. Through genetic testing, they're able to know all of that. But I actually got in touch with them through an agency.
Okay.
I just wanted to. I felt like I get asked a lot, like, why didn't you just do it for somebody you knew? Why didn't you do it for like friends or family? And I just felt like that was a little too close for comfort. I still wanted my family to have their sense of privacy throughout the whole process. Because like if it was a cousin or somebody, you know, like they might be over at your house all the time, watching you, looking at everything you do, kind of nitpicking maybe, and you know, oh, don't eat that, like, you know what I mean? Like there's that pressure, so it's like I don't want that, you know. I don't mind if they come to the appointments and they, you know, they're involved that way, but I wanted my privacy, and so I did. I talked to an agency, and they got me set up with a couple families I had interviewed, and so it's a mutual decision between both you. So like it has to be a yes on both ends. Mm-hmm. It's never forced. So if it's not a good connection, then the agency won't ever recommend it. Mm-hmm. So, but they ask you fill out like a huge bio on yourself, like favorite song, favorite movie, favorite memory, like just random things. There's tons of questions. Yeah. Wow. So it was quite a process, and I had actually gone through 4 agencies, and I was denied 3 of the 4, and the 4th one accepted me. And yeah, so it's just they all kind of have their own. There's like a standard that they follow, a medical standard, and some of them just I don't know what it was they didn't like about me, but. Someone liked something.
It's just such an interesting thing, you know. I think me being in the place where I was when I couldn't get pregnant, I probably would have just been like, yes, whoever can give me a baby, you know. So I had no idea that that's how it worked. So that's good to know.
And it's sad too, because I feel like some they call them so it's intended parents. That's the term used throughout the process, is intended parents, and I feel like they struggle finding a match sometimes. Like sometimes it probably happens really quick, you know, and other times it probably takes a long time, and it's because it has to be mutual on both sides. Like it has to be agreed. Yeah. And a good fit, because I don't know, some people could be really weird about religious beliefs with something like this, or they might have strong beliefs as far as like politics, even the way the world is, and they don't want, like, you know, a Republican raising their liberal baby, or you know what I mean? Like there's weird opinions and things, and so it just depends on, you know, how far they wanna take it. But
yeah, that's super interesting.
And I'm very laid back. I'm very just, you do you, I do me. I don't care. We can live in the same world and be happy, and that's how they are. They're very loving, very kind, very generous. And they've allowed me. One thing that's interesting, throughout the process with their first baby, COVID had happened, and I don't think either of us were prepared for that and what that was going to mean. Yeah. So it definitely put a wrench in things.
Was that before COVID kind of hit officially?
Yeah. So we had signed contracts and everything, and started the process, and I got approved by her clinic and everything. And then in 2020 is when COVID kind of just took off. Yeah. It was crazy. Everything shut down. The whole world shut down. Yeah. And some of the clinics, a lot of the fertility clinics were shutting down. Like they were like just not shutting down completely, but they were like more stringent on what they would do and what they wouldn't do. And it really kind of tested us a lot. Like,
Yeah.
it tested me, and I was like, I don't know if this is something I want to do. Like, if I have to do all this now, like, so it was a process.
So is that before you had the baby put inside? Like, I don't know the terms.
Yes,
like,
yeah. No, the term would be.
I'm so bad.
It's
I should have
fine.
researched just a little bit more.
No, it's okay. My hope in doing this is just to spread awareness for surrogacy and what it is. So it's great that, like,
Yeah.
you know, not everybody's going to know, and I talk about it sometimes. Like, I just assume everybody knows. But so, like, implantation, when they would implant the embryo. So yes, it was before that.
Okay.
And I was like, well, we have to now get COVID tests. And for me and my husband, because he would go with me to New York. That's where their clinic was. And so we'd have to get COVID tests before, like 2 of them, before we even got on the plane.
Which is scary in itself, because that was a really hot zone for COVID, and and that was like,
she was even, we had even talked about it, because she knew I was nervous about it, and she said, I'm even willing to, like, transfer clinics for you, whatever you want to do, like, because she didn't want me to back out. And I think,
is she here in this area, or is she in New York?
So they were in New York prior to COVID. COVID happened. New York just kind of became like a ghost town, and she was not happy, and you could tell she was kind of depressed. I was like, we got to get out. We got to change. So they moved to Florida.
Okay.
So they're in Florida now, and they seem really happy there. Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, I know, because we were living in Hawaii when COVID happened, and it was such a weird world when all that happened, because we just didn't know what was happening or how it would affect everybody, and everything started shutting down. I remember the day that we decided to move back, and really our reasoning for wanting to move back is we were right next to where everything was happening, and our island that we were living on was shutting down, and like, our jobs were shutting down. And we really were like, okay, should we just try to see it through, and maybe it keeps going and we lose all of our savings that we've had, or we use our savings to get back to where we know family is, you know. And as we were coming back to Utah, that was when the earthquake happened, and so we had to actually, because they had shut down some of the airports, we had to fly through Oregon, and it ended up just being this weird thing. I mean, being in an airport where there was, like, nobody there, it was kind of like the apocalypse, and you're just, like, kind of freaking out, thinking, like, what am I coming home to, you know? Because where we were, we didn't actually see too many things shut down quite yet. We left a little bit early because I was worried about my parents and just the age that they were getting at and their health and everything, and I want to make sure they were taken care of. And I'm very close to my family. Family is, like, a huge deal to me, like, and I love that. Even my kids nowadays, like, they just love every moment that we get to spend as a family. And I think that was the scariest part, was coming back, and then there was earthquakes happening, and they were shutting down the airport in Salt Lake, so we couldn't even fly back to where we were trying to get to, and it was a crazy time. So I can't even imagine taking on this big responsibility and not even knowing what your health is going to be like, but the baby's health and this new family and all the traveling. I mean, that would have been really intense. So I totally understand what was like, I don't really understand what was going through your head, but I can imagine how crazy that ended up being.
Yeah. But it worked out. It worked out good. They took a chance, and we just rolled with it, and it ended up great. So
that's awesome. So when you just going through this first one that you went through, how was it, things that you had to work through with your family and, like, emotions and with your relationship with your husband, or has it always been pretty easy? Or
honestly, I'm really lucky. My husband is super supportive. Anything I've ever, like, been like, hey, I want to do this, and I get this crazy idea.
Some of us do that as women, right? We get these crazy ideas.
I want to go skydiving. Like, no, I don't want to do that. But, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. We come up with these crazy random things that we want to do, and he's just like, yeah, you do you. It's fine. Like, I support you, and he tells me all the time, he's like, I enjoy you pregnant. Like, he makes jokes and stuff, but, like, I know, I feel like, and maybe you can relate to this too, maybe, but I feel like when you're pregnant, you're kind of, like, different. Like, you yourself are just different, and maybe it's the glow that, like, everybody talks about with pregnant women, but I truly feel like I'm a different person when I'm pregnant versus when I'm not. Yeah. Like, I feel like pregnancy makes me a little more patient, more nurturing, more kind. Do you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're just kind of more.
Yeah, I was actually really lucky with my pregnancies when I actually did get pregnant. I loved the whole process. I didn't really get sick a ton with
Yeah.
any of my pregnancies either. Easy. I mean, I didn't get really sick with them either, but um, the cool thing about it is that was what part of what I loved so much about having my babies is just that opportunity to have that bond and feel them inside of you and know that you are creating this miracle.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah.
kind of like what gives you that feeling of like being a little different, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, what an even more amazing thing is to be able to have that feeling, but know that you're giving the most beautiful gift of all. And I think that's amazing. With your with what you were going through and with your relationship with this other family, how was that moment in the hospital being able, like, did you hold the baby? Did you?
Yeah, so when they were in the labor and delivery room, and we had talked about it. When you go through the contract phase of surrogacy, there's, if they don't want you to nurse the baby, they can put that in the contract. If they don't want you to do certain things, like, it's all in the contract. And so you have this contractual obligation, this legal obligation to uphold their wishes. And I was more than happy. And one of them was that they had both requested to be in the delivery room, which I was fine with. But again, we're talking COVID delivery time. And so
Yeah.
I was nervous that the hospital wasn't going to allow them in the room. And they actually did. They made an exception
Wow.
because of the situation. So it ended up being me and my husband and then both of them. So they got to be in there and they both. And how cool would this be as a mom to, like, watch your child, like,
Wow,
enter
yeah.
the world? Like, I keep trying to, like, relive that moment and just, like, imagine in my head, like, how awesome that must have been for her as a mom.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you're delivering a child, you don't get to see it. I mean, yeah, there's mirrors
Yeah.
or there's cameras or whatever, but, like, it's not the same. Like, she got to see her child make his way into this world and just come out, and, like, I think that's just so amazing. Like, that's
Yeah.
and I would not want to keep that from her at all.
Yeah.
And that was just really neat to me that she got to be on that end of it,
Yeah.
and have her baby. And so he was born, and they put him on my chest for just a quick minute while they cut the cord, and Dad got to cut the cord. So it was just, I think it was a really great experience for both of them. And then they kind of just cleaned him up and wheeled him out. And that was hard when, you had worked and you pushed and you did all this work for, you're laboring and
Yeah.
doing the pain and everything. And then there's no reward, really, other than seeing their glow and seeing
Yeah.
them happy, which is great. And it's amazing. But it is difficult. I won't sugarcoat it. It was definitely difficult.
Yeah.
And they went to their own room and they were able to have their time, and I respected that. And then about 2 hours later, they had called and said, "Hey, we would maybe want you to nurse the baby if you're okay with that." And I was like, "Yeah, bring him in." And then that made me feel better because I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, like, am I gonna get to, like, what just happened? Like, they just,
Yeah.
I don't get to see the child." And then it was like, like, it was great. And then I knew that I had picked the right people because,
Yeah.
they were like, "No, we want you to nurse him. We want you to have some time with him." And they were really good about it. So it made me happy.
Yeah, that's like one of my most favorite things is that being able to nurse and I'm like a weird mom. Like, I love all of that, like
Yeah.
everything that goes into that. And that was like a big question for me because
Well,
I
that's
think
like a big
that's
connection, right, with your kids and that bond.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, I think that's why maybe they didn't want me to nurse.
Yeah.
Because we had talked about it. We'd kind of gone back and forth, and I first had kind of set that boundary that, no, I didn't want to nurse the baby because I didn't want to get attached.
Yeah.
But then time went on and things kind of changed, and I was like, yeah, I wouldn't mind it. It'd be okay here and there.
Yeah.
Just a little bit here and there. But yeah, it's a bonding thing, so I totally respect her wishes and that. And
Yeah. So is it something that you were nursing even after the hospital, or was it just in the hospital for a little bit?
We did agree upon to pump for a little bit. And so I did. I pumped, and that part was really super difficult. And I felt horrible because, not difficult because, like, I've had 3 kids, and I went back to work after just a short time, and I pumped while I was at work. My employer was really good about giving me that space.
is actually a beautiful gift to be able to give to that family, because I do believe that there is so many nutrients within like getting that milk from your mom. And I think that that's beautiful that you were even willing to do that, because pumping is not easy. It is not a fun activity.
No, it's not.
I hated it when I went back to work with my babies and I was pumping. I
didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it at work because of the time, like the time involved with it, and then you have to get everything set up and prepped, and then you have to do the deed, and then you have to clean up after, right? Like you clean up and wash everything out and then go back to work, and it's a lot. Like 20 minutes of pumping turns into like 45 minutes pretty quick. Yeah. So it was a lot, but I think what I was going to say is that we had decided to continue with the nursing, and so I would pump breast milk for her, and I would have to ship it back. Well, shipping it was interesting, because how do you ship breast milk from one side of the country to the other side of the country without it melting? And so we did a little bit of research, was trying to figure that out, and turned out you needed dry ice. Well, middle of July, everybody wants to make homemade root beer, right? Yeah. There was no dry ice in Tooele. I mean, I had to wait. It was crazy. So I had this stockpile in my freezer of all this milk. I'm like, I have it, I promise. Like, I'd call her on the phone, and she'd ask, and she'd be like, well, just let me know when you're sending it so I know, so I can check so it doesn't melt. And then, like, I'd send her a big shipment all at once. And then I sent the second shipment, and she called, or we were talking, and she's like, oh, yeah, I got it, but it's all melted. And I was like, oh. It didn't work. Awful. So the second time it didn't work because it was hotter. Wow. So it's just frustrating. There was a lot of like learning and up and downs and and different things. So then, so this time, I don't know how that's going to work this time. We've just kind of decided that maybe that's not the route we go. And I think probably just formula feeding this one is probably what will happen.
Yeah. So what made you decide to do this again? Afterwards, there's probably all these emotions that are going on, and like trying to figure out like if it was right for you, or
Yeah, I went through a time period where I just kind of told myself, if they ask again, I just kind of said, I'll probably won't do it again. But if they ask me, I'll consider it, and we'll just have to see where I'm at in our life.
So after you decided that, well, I guess the next question is what made you decide that it was going to be a good fit for you again?
I think just seeing some of the other options, because I did talk to the agency again about maybe some other families, and it just didn't feel right. It really didn't feel right to pursue others. I don't know, there was just something about it, and I just felt like, no, like, it needs to be them. And I think my husband's actually the one that made the comment that it would be really neat for their family and for those kids to have the same biological DNA parents, and to have the same mother carry them. Yeah. And that they would so does that make sense? Like, they have the same, not that I'm not their, I guess I am their birth.
From the same home.
Like their birth mom. Yeah. I guess. I don't know.
Was your thinking in the first place, like, okay, I gave this gift to this family, there's probably other families who don't have a first baby?
And that's kind of how I thought it was like, do you give to one and not the rest? Or like, if you can give a gift, shouldn't you be spread the wealth? You know, that was kind of my thing. And so I thought like I was going to try to pursue other families, but then I just kept going back, and it was like, you could get somebody that seems great, and then you have an awful experience, and I didn't want that. You know, for either of us, I wouldn't ever want the family to feel like I was an issue, or I was, impeding their life, or causing issues with their dream and their goal of having this baby. Yeah. And I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that for anybody. It wouldn't be a good thing. So, I don't know. Did I answer that?
No, I think that would be, just having gone through what you went through with this first one, and that feeling of giving that baby away, and then just knowing within yourself that it was something that you wanted to do again, that would be a really hard decision, because I think that's how I would feel, is I'd be like, okay, I want to give this gift to multiple families, but it completely makes sense, because there's probably some kind of beautiful bond that those boys, or the boy and the girl, can have, by having come from the same mom, and having that you know, because I do feel like our babies kind of get something from us as we're carrying them. And so maybe there's something to that in the bond that they'll have because of that. And
Yeah.
I think that's
There's
beautiful.
definitely a bond there and a love there. Genetically, though, like, there's nothing of mine, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a fun thing, and being able to give them the gift of having the two. Are they, so you only have like 2 months left with this pregnancy, right?
Yep.
And are you guys, so did you, before doing this, were you guys deciding that you guys were done with kids, or?
Yeah, we kind of reached that decision, and I just kind of felt like, I don't necessarily want to do daycare again. I mean, he's 5 now. At the time, he was 3, and I had finally just gotten the 2 older 2 in school and in a good rhythm, and I just was like, I don't want to do diapers again. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go back to work and pump again. And maybe that's a little bit selfish of me, but I was like, I'm good. I have my 3 boys, and it's good. We don't need to mess that up. It's good.
I know with me, like, I come from a big family. I'm the youngest of 6, and I always wanted to have a big family. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have 8 kids. And then, like, after I had a baby, I was like, okay, 6 kids. And then
you were kind of like,
after I had my second baby, I was like, okay, well, then after our second baby, we struggled to be able to get pregnant again. So after that, I was like, okay, 4 babies, because I'm like, I don't know if I could go through this whole thing again, because after trying for 2 years, it just was too much, like, emotionally to go through. And if I had to go through that every time, I had it all planned out. I was like, every 2 years I'm gonna have a baby, right? And so that way I can still be young when I have all my kids and still be able to do all the things, right? But then with that not working out, we actually did try for a 4th, and I had one of my worst miscarriages, and I think that was what, like, just knowing how hard it was to get pregnant with that baby, and then having to go through that whole experience of experiencing such an awful miscarriage. My husband was a firefighter at the time, so he was at the fire station when I went through my miscarriage, and I just had my 3 young kids with me at the time. And I remember I was, like, driving in traffic, and all of a sudden, like, I started having big contractions, and I knew something wasn't right. And it was kind of this weird bonding moment with my kids, where I did what I could to make it through the traffic jam, get home. It took me like 20 minutes. I was going through these really awful labor pains, driving through traffic, trying to get to a place where I could go help myself, because I knew something wasn't right. And my little kids just kind of came to my rescue when I needed it, and for a while after that, they remembered that day, being able to help mom, and they knew that they had a little brother or sister that wasn't going to end up being with us. Like, they kind of weirdly, like, knew that. And it was kind of this weird moment as a mom, where even though my kids were, like, they were 2, 6, and 8, and they just kind of came to my rescue and helped me, like, make it through all the emotional stuff that I was going through, because my husband wasn't there, and I don't know, I think in that moment, like, it was really a really hard decision after that miscarriage to decide to not have any more. Like, we kept going back and forth on it, but it was such a dangerous one that I went through that I was like, okay, it's not worth like that risk. And the fact that, like, that beautiful bonding moment that I had with my kids, it was just this, like, beautiful moment where I realized that they were everything I needed in my life, and it was like this complete moment for me, so I don't know, I just think this is, like, such a beautiful gift that you can give to people. And do you think it's something, I don't know, it's probably not a question that I should ask, but is it something that you think that you'll want to keep doing, or is this, like, something that kind of completes you with kind of completing their family a little bit?
I think I'm probably done after this one. Yeah. Like, I don't think I'll do it again. Even if they were to ask me, I don't think so. I'm just not. Life's too busy, and our kids are older now.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard. It's difficult. So I think I'm done. I think I feel complete in this little adventure, this little chapter of my life, and doing this and exploring this.
And you know what? I forgot we didn't even show some of your other pictures, but I kind of wanted to show a few more. So is this your first baby in both of these?
Yep. So
Okay.
the first picture was probably closer to 24 weeks, maybe. And then in the picture on the right with just the white dress on, I was probably closer to, I think, 34 weeks. So I was getting really close to the end.
You are such a beautiful pregnant woman also.
Thank you.
I always tell people, like, I feel like I look like Shrek. I love my pregnancies, and they were like this beautiful thing for me, and I love every moment of it, but I look back on pictures and I'm like, that should never happen.
Oh, whatever.
Even though I did enjoy the experience.
We are our worst critics, though.
Yes.
We think
definitely.
that, yeah. And
I love this picture, actually. I think this is just a fun picture to show, I don't know, like your kids kind of just being a part of it, you know, because it has to be a family adventure for you guys.
It really is. Like, it's really strengthened our family and helped us grow together and to be grateful for what we have. And it's really, there was a time where I really doubted myself as a mom, and I didn't think that I had made the right choice in being a mother. But this experience has really helped me to see and just to have a deeper appreciation, deeper sense of love for my kids. And like I said, when I'm pregnant, I'm a little more patient. And it's really helped me grow with my kids. In this picture, we actually went camping, and they just got super, super dirty, and I didn't even care. I was like, whatever, you're boys. Boys are gonna be boys. And my husband took the picture, and I didn't want him to take the picture, you know, because you're pregnant and all this stuff. And he's like, turn around. So, okay, whatever. So, but yeah, they were very much involved in the whole process. And like yesterday, we went and had an ultrasound for fetal photos for baby girl, and she smiled in one of the pictures. And my son Bridger, he's in the background there in that picture, the little tiny guy back there. He's like, oh, she smiled. And Alex like, yeah, she smiled. My husband Alex, he's like, she smiled because she heard you giggle. And I think there's a lot behind that. Like, there is. So it was just really, really sweet moment for us. And I know they don't fully understand it, but they understand. They know what's going on. They know that it's like, that it's not their baby. They know that. Like, we've made that very clear. Mm-hmm. And my middle child, Brody, he's kind of he's got a little teen angst, even though he's only 8.
Yeah.
But he told me the other day, he says, Mom, if it's a girl, we should keep it. And I'm like, buddy, it is a girl. I'm like, but no, we can't keep it.
Yeah, like, we designed it that way.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah.
And that's hard. That's probably even a little hard to hear when you are talking to your own babies, right?
Yeah, they keep playing with me. They're like, are you going to have another baby, Mom? And like, I'll ask my eldest, I'll be like, do you want to be? I'm like, if we had a girl, would you be okay with that? And like last night, I think it caught him off guard because he looked at me and he's all, and then he's all, no, I don't want any siblings, no. But he's the oldest, right? He's done with it.
He's like, I'm done with all these little people.
Yeah.
No, I think that's cute, and especially the thing that you said about them being dirty, right? I think there was a moment in my life, because I always grew up camping with having such a big family, and you don't realize as a mom what your mom goes through, having to clean all the kids constantly and make sure that nothing makes it into your trailer or your tent, you know, and it's a big responsibility. Like, when you take your family camping, like, you're not actually just sitting around relaxing, you're doing everything. And I remember that moment for me too, when our kids, like, it was kind of muddy in this camping area that we were at, and they were just covered in mud, and they were about the same ages as your kids in that picture. And I remember, like, Brandon was freaking out, my husband Brandon, and he's just like, oh, get him clean, all this. And then finally we looked at each other and we're like,
what's the point? They're just going to go out and do it again in 5 minutes.
They're kids, you know, let them be kids, you know. And I think as moms, we actually kind of get down on ourselves more than we need to. And I think something that I've learned throughout like being a mom is if you're questioning whether you're a good enough mom or not, you're usually probably the best mom, right? Because if you realize that you're lacking in certain areas, that means that you recognize that and you're trying to do something better for your family. And I think a lot of times as moms, we're really hard on ourselves for those types of things. And I know with me, like whenever I miss anything for my kids, I freak out and I'm like, I'm the worst mom, you know?
Yeah.
And I have these moments and I'm like, but I'm trying my hardest.
Yeah.
And I want to give this to them, and I'm just maybe need to look at how I'm doing things in life and maybe reevaluate my priorities, you know? And I think that's the hardest thing, is to realize that it's okay not to be perfect as a parent.
It is.
You can't be perfect.
Yep.
So this is probably, was this through COVID?
Yeah, this was COVID. This was actually in one of the, so I would have to, probably the hardest part of the surrogacy for me was the daily injections. You have to take all these hormones. It's not just like a normal pregnancy. Like,
oh, really?
So, yeah. So there was an injectable hormone. I'm not really sure which one, because there was like 2-3 hormones. But they would, it's an injectable hormone. You take it every day. You have to give yourself a shot, either like in the buttocks or your arm or your leg. And so that was the hardest part. And then when you start that process of that, and then the oral hormones that you take as well, then you have to go in for these checkups at the fertility center. And I actually went into the Utah Fertility Center over in Murray, and I would drive there maybe like, sometimes it was once a week, sometimes it was once every other week, just to check everything out and see where everything was at. And they wanted to check, the reason for that is that they're checking your lining of your uterus to make sure it's a certain thickness and that it's acceptable, and I guess prime to accept the embryo once it's implanted.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting, because you're monitoring and it's kind of slow and you kind of know what to expect, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, you're ready, and you're like, oh, okay, now we have to get flights. I need to go to New York and I need to be there by like this day.
Wow.
And so I'd have to call her and be like, okay, we're ready, and then she would talk to the clinic and they'd get everything worked out. And so yeah, it's just, you kind of have to be very, very flexible. There's times where you have to just go with it and just trust the process.
So you're going through all these shots and these pills and stuff that you're having to take before you even have the baby implanted inside of you.
Yep.
Wow.
Even before. Yep. Long before you even get to that part. There's a whole process.
How long did that take?
I think it was probably 3 or 4 weeks of injections and medicines.
Wow.
It just depends. Everybody's a little bit different. Our bodies are all different. My lining was a little bit thinner than they had liked to begin with. And then when they decided it was ready, that we were good to go, it was still kind of, she told me, she's like, it's okay, and the clinic's probably okay with it. It's probably where we need to be. She's like, but I know for our standards, we'd want you to be a little bit more.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, because it's like things you don't really think about.
Yeah, you don't think about it. A lot of people don't know. And that's Dalton, the day he was born. Yeah, that's when they brought him in and I got to hold him and see him after. So it was definitely, that right there is the reward. When I said there was no reward, it's like there is.
Yeah.
Knowing that you got to help another family experience this love and to know this, to have that light in their lives that they never had before is amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's the family with their baby.
I love that.
And we get to do it again. And the babies might end up with the same birthday, oddly enough.
Really?
The timing of everything. Oh, yeah. Everything just kind of fell into place kind of the same way. So could have same birthdays. We'll see.
That's crazy. Yeah, Oh. So have you stayed in contact, and like how is that process with you guys? Like, do you have any type of relationship or?
Oh yeah, we definitely have a relationship. It's definitely different. So the first surrogacy with Dalton and then this one, it's definitely different. There's definitely a lot more space because now they have Dalton to care for and they know what day to day is like being parents and moving through those motions and just living day to day with a child. It's hard. It's hard. Being a mom, being a dad, it can be very, very, very hard. So there's definitely more space with this one, but we were able to go to Miami and see them about a year ago, and we asked if they wanted to meet up for dinner, and they said yes, and we actually took those pictures at the those last pictures. We actually took those outside of the restaurant after we had had dinner, and yeah, and don't mind my sunburn. I have a ridiculous sunburn. Like, that was crazy. I totally was like, oh, I'm good. And then we put sunscreen on, I'm good. Oh, no. Don't, yeah. It was bad. But he recognized both my voice and Alex's voice. He turned right over to us and was, like, instantly drawn. So, like you said, there's a connection there. There's definitely something there.
Yeah.
And then this past Valentine's Day, they sent me and the boys, Valentine's card, and if you read the card, it says on the back side of that little card, it says special delivery, and then this is the back. On the front it says special delivery, but if you read it at the bottom, she signed it cousin Dalton, and then it says to my cousin Holmes.
Aww.
So my cousins, yeah.
That's super cute. So did the boys go with you to Florida?
No, Alec and I just went. We needed a break. We needed just that, a mom-dad time, and it was good for us because we haven't had that for a long time. We probably haven't had that since, like, just us, probably since my first was maybe, he was probably 2. Our oldest was probably 2, so like 8 years ago. It was that long, so it was needed.
You definitely needed that.
Yeah.
I know, for Brandon and I, we usually do a trip for him and I, and then one for the kids every other year. Like, we'll do one big trip. And
yeah, this last trip really opened our eyes, and we realized how much we need that time. You don't realize it because you're just like, oh, we're good, but it's like, no, we need to do this more for ourselves.
You kind of get in the mode of just being parents and kind of just living your day to day. And because Brandon and I both actually have our own businesses that we are, like, I work for an agency, but like, we both have to manage our own time with the work, and so it's hard for us to be like, okay, let's go on vacation, but once you get on vacation together and you realize just that you can get back to the way that you were before kids, and it's just about you and your partner and this beautiful moment that you get to reconnect. It's like one of those things that you're like, okay, we got to do this all the time. But we just went on a vacation with our kids, and my kids are like teenagers, right? And going on vacation with your kids is exhausting. I love every minute of it. but it's you need a vacation from your vacation.
You do.
Yeah. So what would you say if you had somebody that was thinking about being a surrogate mother, like, what kind of advice would you give to them, and would you recommend it for people to do?
I would recommend it. I think if you are open-minded and you are willing to, not to say you're a puppet, because you still have your own, like, you can still decide, you can still say no, you can still set boundaries, and everything's agreed upon contractually. But I think if you can be open to certain requests, or be open to the fact that, you have to give yourself a shot every day. Is that a possibility for you? You are going to put hormones in your body. Is that something you even want to do?
Yeah.
But if you can get through that side of it, and physically you can carry a baby full term, do it. Like, it's an amazing gift to give somebody, and I think that there should be more. Not that the world needs more people, but I think families need more love, right? Like, we can always spread more love, and then by growing families, that's what we're doing essentially, is growing love and trying to build a better world. So
yeah, I love that. I know that going through not being able to have a kid is such an awful experience to have to go through, and I really, really love your story, because it actually just hits home for me on so many levels. And like, not even knowing whether I was going to be able to have more kids, and luckily I was, but giving that gift to somebody else is probably the most beautiful gift you could ever give, and on such a loving level, because you really do have to be able to give up something that you've been carrying for 9 months, and I think that's
probably would be the hardest part for me, you know, but that is such an amazing gift, such a beautiful thing. And I'm so glad I get to start my podcast off with you because, you know, I love being a mom and I love the whole experience. And again, like we've said, like being a mom is not easy.
No.
And you have your ups and downs. You have times when you want to pull your hair out.
Oh, yeah.
You have times where you're like, why am I even doing this?
Yeah, exactly.
And you have those moments where you are, you know, you're just so hard on yourselves because we try so hard to be the perfect mom, to be the perfect parents, because we know that that job is the most important job above all. And we're having to have these children actually be adults one day and being able to have them go out on their own. My son's just graduating this year, and it's crazy to think that one day, long time ago, I held this little teeny thing in my arms, and now he's like taller than I am, and he's turning into an adult, and he's got to go live his own life, and we all just hope to be good enough parents that they're going to be beautiful, kind human beings and give to the world. And I think you are the perfect example for that, and giving to the world, giving to this family, and there's so much love that comes with that. And I don't even know this other family, but thank you for being such a beautiful part of this world. I mean,
thank you.
It's amazing. So anyways, thank you guys for joining us. This was really fun. I love getting to know you a little bit more, Jess. And I mean, if you guys have ever thought about doing it, like, this is a lot of information. There's a lot to take in here.
There's a lot.
But, you know, giving the gift of motherhood, of having the family that you want to have, is the most beautiful thing. I cherish every moment that I get to have with my family, and this is such a beautiful gift. And I hope that you guys really loved being able to hear this, and I hope to see you guys soon. And come join us, like, subscribe, hit your notifications. Yeah, I'd love to have you guys back. So you guys have an amazing day. All you mothers out there, happy Mother's Day, and you are amazing, amazing part of our world. So love you guys, and see you guys soon.